Judgment in an application by the Centre for Child Law against Minister of Basic Education and others. They are questioning the decision by Minister Motshekga to exclude learners without identity numbers, passports or permits. Let's get the very latest now with regards to this case. Iviwe Poti is joining us live. Iviwe, give us a sense of what we're talking about here and some of the details of this case.
A very good morning, Blaine, and we are here in Makhanda, actually just outside the courtroom where this matter has been heard and where the judgment will then be placed in terms of today. We do know that the respondents are the Minister of Basic Education as well as the MEC of Education within the province, and the applicants are 37 learners whom are based here in the Eastern Cape. But obviously, you know, the Eastern Cape, in this case will then go through because the matters that they are discussing here, and they want amendments to also go as far as the Constitution, and it would obviously affect each and every child who doesn't have an identification or a birth certificate throughout the country, because these would then be children that are refugees within the country. It would be children that have lost documentation. It would be children that have lost parents and are with grandmothers. And I guess within the Eastern Cape, some of the highlights that we've seen in the documentation that has been put forward is that some of these children are in rural areas and they don't have access to home affairs, they don't have access to hospitals, and that shouldn't be a reason to exclude them from schooling. And we do know that some of the reasons that are behind the basic Minister of Education and as well as the MEC is that when you look at the feeding scheme in schools and as well as the allocation of teachers, that is dependent on the number of pupils in a class, and they then indicate the number of pupils by identification, identifying each and every pupil by an ID number or a birth certificate that is put forward to them. So, you know, those are some of the things that we'll be hearing today. Also looking at the Constitution in terms of how does it deal with these pupils, and as well as the right to education and what limits education, because as far as, the applicants are concerned, nothing should limit them to an education. And at this stage, most of those that are affected are those at junior school level, Blaine.
So we also understand from reporting that 30 children from the Phakamisa High School in Port Elizabeth have also been affected. Do we know how so?
It's those pupils, Blaine. Some of them have lost parents. I think a few months ago when we spoke to the lawyers representing the applicants, they gave us some examples, such as one of the pupils, her father is from Lesotho. He then passed away. They were unable to get documentation. She's currently living with the grandmother in South Africa, who's unable to go to Home Affairs and get documentation for her. So it's situations such as those where you find grandparents or parents in a situation where they can't get documentation from Home Affairs because of the red tape that we have already in terms of, you have to have a birth certificate before you get an ID, and as well as issues such as not having access, being able to get to a Home Affairs. We also know of those children that are refugees. Their parents are refugees within the country, so they don't have the proper documentation. But obviously now the applicant's saying that that shouldn't exclude them from the schooling system in South Africa.
Look, I guess it all boils down to a child's right to education. It is an emotive issue as well. What's the community saying, Iviwe? Have you had a chance to engage with them in terms of, even if their children are not involved in this, what are they saying with regards to a way forward with regards to this issue?
At this stage, we've been unable to speak to community members. As you, would also see that some of these applicants come from various parts of the Eastern Cape. However, we do know that the South African Human Rights Commission is also, they added themselves to this court case as well, saying they are backing the applicants and they need an amendment in terms of the Constitution and how to deal with these pupils, because obviously the minister there is saying that, even for a matric examination, you need to have an identification number. So those are the technicalities that they are facing as a department as well.
Let's leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your reporting there. Iviwe Poti live for us in the Eastern Cape.